Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notification. The record states that Leo Vance, aged 38, believed his life was built on a foundation of fairness. He operated under the assumption that effort, honesty, and loyalty were rewarded in kind. For nearly a decade, his own life had served as proof of this theory. He was a successful financial analyst at a reputable firm in the city of Silverwood, a job that demanded order and predictability, two qualities he cherished. His home, a comfortable two-story house on a quiet, tree-lined street in the suburb of Willow Creek, was a sanctuary of that order. And at the center of it all was Chloe Vance, 37, a pottery artist who worked from a studio in their sunlit basement. They had been married for 9 years, a period Leo would later catalog in his mind as the before. They didn't have children yet, a decision they'd mutually agreed to postpone until their 40th birthdays were on the horizon. Their routine was predictable, a word Leo once considered a comfort. They cooked dinners together, him chopping vegetables with precision, while she moved around the kitchen with an artist's fluid grace. They took long walks on Sunday mornings, their conversations easy and meandering. They binged television shows, curled up on the same worn leather sofa where he'd proposed. Leo was not a naive man. He understood that marriage required maintenance, a conscious effort from both parties, but he was proud of the structure they had built. He trusted Chloe with a completeness that felt absolute, as solid and unquestionable as the ground beneath his feet. He believed he knew her every mood, every fear, every quiet joy. The first tremor in that foundation occurred on a Saturday morning in late May. Leo was standing at the kitchen window, sipping his first coffee of the day, when the moving truck rumbled to a stop next door. The house had been vacant for nearly 6 months, after the elderly Mrs. Gable had moved into an assisted living facility. He watched a young couple emerge, directing the movers with a series of points and gestures. The man looked to be around Leo's age, maybe a little older, with dark, styled hair, and a posture that radiated an unearned confidence. The woman was blonde, hair smile wide, her gestuures enthusiastic. Leo turned to Chloe, who was arranging a set of freshly glazed bowls on a shelf. "New neighbors," he said, a genuine warmth in his voice. "They look about our age. What do you think about inviting them over for dinner next week? It'd be nice to make them feel welcome." This moment he would later replay in his mind countless times, scrutinizing it from every angle. Chloe glanced out the window, a fleeting, almost imperceptible movement. Her eyes barely registered the scene, before she turned back to her pottery. "Sure," she replied. "Why not?" The flatness of her tone was the first piece of data that didn't fit the established pattern. There was no curiosity, no reciprocal excitement. It was the disinterest of someone processing an irrelevant piece of information. At the time, Leo dismissed it. He reasoned she was preoccupied with her work, her mind on clay and kilns. He now understands. It was the disinterest of someone who already knew too much. Over the next week, Leo encountered the new neighbor a few times. The man introduced himself as Marcus Thorne, a marketing consultant who worked from home. His wife's name was Tessa, a children's book illustrator. Marcus was articulate and friendly, the kind of man whose handshake was a firm, almost competitive display of dominance. Leo found him slightly overbearing, but decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. He officially extended the dinner invitation for Friday night, and Marcus accepted with an eagerness that seemed to compensate for Chloe's earlier lack of it. On Friday evening, the house filled with the rich aroma of the braised short ribs Chloe was preparing. Leo noticed she was quieter than usual, her movements more mechanical than graceful. He catalogued it as work fatigue. He now sees it for what it was, the heavy silence of dread. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Leo opened it with a wide, genuine smile. "Marcus, Tessa, welcome," he greeted. "Come on in. Chloe's just putting the finishing touches on dinner." They stepped inside. Tessa was radiant, talkative, full of an infectious energy. Marcus followed her, a polite, practiced smile on his face. Leo led them toward the dining room. "Chloe," he called out. "Our guests are here." And then it happened. The moment the entire future pivoted. Chloe stepped out of the kitchen, holding a platter of roasted vegetables. Her eyes met Marcus's first. And what Leo witnessed in the next 3 seconds would be permanently burned into his memory. A high-definition recording of the exact moment his life broke. Time, as Leo would later document it, seemed to warp. It stretched and thinned, allowing him to observe every minute detail of the scene that unfolded in his own hallway. Chloe, holding the platter, took one step out of the kitchen. And then stopped, as if she had walked into a pane of glass. Observation. Subject Chloe Vance froze mid-step. Her forward momentum ceased. The color, a healthy, rosy flush from the heat of the kitchen, drained from her face so abruptly that for a terrifying second, Leo thought she was having a stroke. The heavy ceramic platter trembled in her hands. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound emerged. It was not a look of surprise. It was a look of pure, unadulterated shock. The kind one experiences when a ghost from a buried past materializes in the present. Across from her, Marcus's reaction was more controlled, but no less telling. The man's practiced smile faltered for a fraction of a second. His eyes widened, a flicker of unguarded astonishment, before a mask of composure slid back into place. It was the look of a man caught in a scenario he had planned for, but for which he was still, fundamentally, unprepared. Tessa, bubbly and oblivious, stepped forward. "Chloe, it's so lovely to finally meet you. The smell coming from your kitchen is absolutely divine." The sound of her voice seemed to break the spell. "Chloe, are you okay?" Leo asked quickly, moving to her side. Placing a steadying hand on her arm, she blinked several times, as if waking from a trance. Yes, I'm fine," she said. Her voice was thin, reedy. She forced a smile that was a grotesque parody of her usual warmth. It didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry," she said. "I think my blood pressure just dropped for a second. Stood up too fast in the kitchen." It was, Leo now realizes, the first in a long series of clumsy, insulting lies. A poorly constructed alibi, for an emotional reaction she could not contain. "Nice to meet you, Marcus." "Tessa. Welcome to the neighborhood," she managed to say. Marcus extended a hand, a general gesture toward the room. "The pleasure is all ours. Thanks for having us. Leo has spoken very highly of you." His voice was smooth, rehearsed. He was already performing, already managing the narrative. The dinner that followed was a strange and stilted affair, an exercise in tension management. Tessa carried the entire conversation. She talked animatedly about their move, their plans, their travels. Leo played his part, asking questions, laughing at the appropriate moments, trying to fill the cavernous silences that fell whenever Tessa paused for breath. And Chloe was a void. She barely spoke, offering only monosyllabic responses. She kept her eyes fixed on her plate, meticulously cutting her food into smaller and smaller pieces. She avoided looking at Marcus at all costs. On the few occasions when their eyes accidentally met, she would flinch, look away as if she had received a mild electric shock. Leo watched it all with a growing sense of unease. This was not his wife. He knew her tired moods, her stressed moods, her annoyed moods. This was something entirely different. This looked like fear, but it was fear mixed with something else. Something he couldn't quite name at the time, but now recognizes with perfect clarity. Guilt. When the neighbors finally left, the relief in the room was palpable. Leo closed the door and turned to Chloe. She was already rushing to clear the table, her movements frantic and jerky. "Want to tell me what that was?" he asked, his voice direct. Chloe didn't look at him. "What was what? What was what? You barely said 3 words all night. You looked like you'd seen a ghost when they walked in." She finally stopped, her hands gripping the edge of the dining table. She met his gaze, and in her eyes, Leo saw a flicker of panic. "I already told you. My blood pressure dropped. I wasn't feeling well. That's all." He wanted to press her. Every instinct in his analytical mind told him there was more data to be collected. That her explanation did not align with the observable facts. But something held him back. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was the deep, primal reluctance to admit that something might be fundamentally wrong in the life he had so carefully constructed. He let it go. He filed the strange, tense evening away in a mental folder labeled Unexplained Phenomena. A fatal error in judgment that allowed the infection to fester in the dark. In the weeks that followed, Leo began to notice a significant shift in Chloe's behavior. Subtle at first. A series of minor deviations from the established baseline. But for a man like Leo, who found comfort in patterns, these deviations were like flashing warning lights on a control panel. Chloe, who had always been a homebody, suddenly developed an intense social bond with her new neighbor. The initial excuse was plausible enough. "I'm just popping over to help Tessa with some curtain choices," she'd say. A week later, it was, "Tessa wants my opinion on some landscaping projects for the backyard." Soon, these impromptu visits became a routine. Chloe would come home from her studio, change clothes, and head straight to the Thorn house, often returning only just before dinner. The easy companionship that had defined their evenings was replaced by a strained silence. "You and Tessa have really hit it off," Leo commented one night, attempting a casual tone. Chloe smiled, a practiced, distant expression he was beginning to see more and more often. "She's really nice. It's good to have a friend so close. We have a lot in common." He wanted to ask more. Is Marcus ever there during these long visits? He wanted to ask why her new friendship seemed to require hours of her time every single day, eclipsing every other part of her life, including him. But he swallowed the questions. He told himself he was being paranoid, possessive, a rationalization, a desperate attempt to maintain the illusion of normalcy. The truth was, the house felt different. It felt emptier. Even when she was in it, the silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was heavy with unspoken words. Intimacy dwindled. Her excuses were always ready. She was tired. She had a headache. She was stressed. To Leo, these were not reasons. They were deflections. His own behavior began to change in response. He became an observer in his own home, a data analyst tracking the growing inconsistencies. He paid attention to the way she angled her phone away from him when a text came in. He noticed the slight jump in her shoulders when he entered a room unexpectedly. He hated the man he was becoming, suspicious, anxious, a silent accuser. But her actions were forcing him into this role. She was creating the mystery that he felt compelled to solve. Summer arrived, blanketing Willow Creek in a thick, humid heat. As their 10th anniversary approached, Leo decided to host a party. His motivation, he told himself, was to celebrate a milestone. But a deeper, unacknowledged part of him hoped that surrounding themselves with friends and family might somehow remind Chloe of what she was jeopardizing. A foolish, desperate hope. He invited a few close friends, Chloe's parents, her younger sister, Sophie, and, of course, he invited the neighbors. The day of the party was bright and sunny. Leo was manning the grill, a cold beer in his hand, feeling a fragile sense of optimism. Chloe was moving among the guests, laughing and chatting, seeming more like her old self than she had in months. For a brief, blissful period, Leo allowed himself to believe that he had been wrong. Then, Marcus and Tessa arrived. Leo watched his wife from across the lawn. He saw the almost imperceptible stiffening of her spine. The way her smile became just a little more rigid. She recovered quickly, greeting them with a warmth that, to his newly critical eye, looked utterly fabricated. The brief illusion of normalcy shattered. Sophie, Chloe's younger sister, arrived late, as always. She was 28, a fiercely independent nurse with an unfiltered personality. She breezed in through the side gate, carrying a tray of homemade brownies. "Sorry, I'm late, traffic was a nightmare," she announced. Her eyes scanned the yard, taking in the familiar faces. They swept past Chloe's father, past Leo at the grill, and then they landed on Marcus. Leo was in the middle of flipping a row of chicken skewers when he heard Sophie's voice, loud and ringing with genuine, shocking surprise. "Wait a second." The casual party chatter around them seemed to dip in volume. "What is my sister's ex-fiancé doing here?" The world didn't slow down. It slammed to a complete halt. Leo's hand, holding a pair of stainless steel tongs, froze mid-air. The tongs slipped from his grasp and clattered onto the patio stones. The sound, impossibly loud in the sudden, profound silence. Several conversations around the yard died at once. He saw heads turn. Expressions shifting from cheerful to confused. He slowly turned his head towards Sophie. She was standing by the dessert table, her eyes wide. The realization of what she had just done dawned on her. "Oh," she whispered. You didn't know." Leo's gaze shifted to his wife. Chloe was standing near the drink station. Her face was ashen, a deathly white. She looked like a statue. Her eyes locked on her sister with an expression of pure horror. He then looked at Marcus. The man's confident facade had crumbled, revealing a flicker of raw panic. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his eyes darting around as if seeking an escape route. "What did you say?" Leo asked. His voice was low and dangerously calm. It cut through the silence. Sophie looked like she wanted the ground to open up and swallow her. I'm so sorry, Leo. I assumed you knew. Marcus. He was Chloe's fiancé. They were engaged, how long ago was it, Chloe? 13, 14 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Absolute. A vacuum. Sucking all the air and life out of the cheerful summer afternoon. Leo felt a strange, detached sensation. As if he were floating above his own body, watching a scene from a terrible movie. He looked at his wife, searching her face for a denial, for any sign that this was a horrible, absurd mistake. But her face said it all. The guilt, the fear, the shame. It was all there, laid bare for everyone to see. Tears began to well in her eyes. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Tessa was the first to react, her voice trembling with confusion and a rising tide of anger. "Marcus? What is she talking about?" Marcus, cornered, turned to his wife. "Tessa, baby, I can explain. It was a long time ago." "Explain what?" Leo interrupted, his voice finally breaking, rising in volume. The detached calm shattered, replaced by a hot surge of rage and humiliation. "Explain why you never thought to mention you were once engaged to my wife? Explain why she's been spending half her life at your house for the past 2 months? Chloe finally found her voice. A desperate, pleading whisper. "Leo, it's not what you think. I swear. I didn't know he was moving here. When I saw him that first night, I was just stunned. I didn't know what to do." "So you did nothing?" he shot back, the pain sharp and clear in every word. "You chose to lie to me every single day? Why hide this from me, Chloe?" "Because I was afraid," she cried, tears now streaming down her face. "I was afraid you'd react exactly like this. That you'd think the worst." "That was years ago, man," Marcus tried to intervene. "It has nothing to do with now. There is nothing going on between us." Tessa let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Oh, really? Nothing going on? Then why did you never tell me that your ex-fiancée lived next door? Why did you let me invite her into our home, become her friend? While you kept this little detail a secret." The party was over. The carefully constructed facade of their lives had been sledgehammered into pieces in front of their friends and family. Guests began to murmur excuses, their eyes avoiding Leo's as they slipped away quietly through the side gate. Chloe's parents tried to approach him, but Leo waved them off. He couldn't speak. He couldn't think. All he could feel was the profound, searing humiliation of being made a fool of. In his own backyard, he had been betrayed. And the betrayal had been made public spectacle. The structure of his life had not just been cracked. It had been demolished. That night, the fight was everything Leo had been avoiding for weeks. It was ugly, raw, and circular. Chloe's defense was a looping mantra of denial and apology. She insisted nothing physical had happened. She swore she had hidden the truth only out of fear. "If you have nothing to hide," Leo asked, his voice hoarse with pain, "why all the lies?" "It wasn't a lie. It was an omission," she sobbed. "I know I messed up, Leo, but I swear on our marriage, nothing happened." The phrase, "on our marriage," struck him as particularly obscene. He wanted to believe her. A desperate, Wounded part of him clawed at the possibility that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But the seed of doubt, planted on the night of that first dinner, had now grown into a suffocating weed, choking everything else. He slept in the guest room that night, and for all the nights that followed, the relationship between the two households became a silent, cold war. Tessa stopped speaking to Chloe completely. A for sale sign appeared on their lawn less than a week later. The tension in Leo's own home was a thick, unbreathable smog. But Leo couldn't let it go. The uncertainty was a corrosive acid, eating away at his mind. The truth was no longer something he could ask for. It was something he had to find. 2 weeks after the barbecue, sitting alone in the sterile silence of his office, Leo made a decision that violated every principle he once held. But trust was already dead. He researched home security systems online. He found one, the size of a small USB adapter, that streamed high-definition footage directly to a smartphone app. He bought two. One morning, after Chloe had left, Leo installed them. One in the living room, angled to capture the sofa. The second, in the upstairs hallway. He felt a wave of self-loathing as he did it. It was a sordid, desperate act. But the need to know, to have irrefutable data, had overridden everything else. The uncertainty was destroying him more thoroughly than any truth ever could. The first few days of monitoring were excruciatingly mundane. A profound guilt began to settle over Leo. Maybe she had been telling the truth. Maybe I'm the one destroying our marriage with my paranoia. Then came the third week. A Wednesday afternoon. Leo was stuck in a quarterly budget meeting. His phone, resting on his lap, buzzed. A notification from the camera app. Motion detected in living room. He ignored it at first. But a gnawing feeling, a prickle of instinct, made him check. He discreetly opened the app. His heart began to hammer against his ribs. The live feed appeared on his screen. Chloe was there. But she was not alone. Marcus was with her. They were standing near the sofa, talking in low, urgent tones. Leo's breath caught in his throat. He tried to stay rational. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe he came over to discuss the sale of the house. 1,000 benign possibilities flashed through his mind, each one more pathetic than the last. Then, he watched. He watched as Marcus stepped closer to Chloe. He reached out and touched her face, his thumb gently stroking her cheek, with an intimacy that left no room for doubt. Chloe didn't pull away. She didn't flinch. On the contrary, she leaned into his touch, her eyes closing for a brief moment. And then, they kissed. Leo felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. The air left his lungs in a silent gasp. His hands began to shake so badly he nearly dropped the phone. On the tiny screen, in crystal clear resolution, his wife was kissing another man. In their living room, on the same sofa where they had planned their future. It was a deep, lingering kiss. Not a fleeting mistake. Marcus's hands slid down to her waist, pulling her closer. She wrapped her arms around his neck. It was the practiced, familiar kiss of lovers. A kiss that spoke of a shared history that had never truly ended. Leo shut off the app. He couldn't watch another second. He stood up abruptly. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "Family emergency." He drove home in a daze. The kiss played on a loop in his mind. All of Chloe's excuses. All her tears. All her desperate vows. Lies. All of them. Calculated, cruel, lease. When he got home, the house was empty. He sat down on the sofa. In the exact spot where he had just witnessed the ultimate betrayal. He sat there for hours, staring into the encroaching darkness. When Chloe walked in around 7 o'clock, she found him. "Leo? Are you okay? Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked. Her voice laced with a false, cheerful concern. He looked up at her. At the face of a stranger. "Sit down," he said. His voice was eerily calm, devoid of all emotion. Something in his tone must have warned her. She obeyed immediately. Without a word, Leo picked up his phone, opened the app, navigated to the recorded event. He turned the screen toward her, and pressed play. He watched her face cycle through a storm of emotions. Confusion. Then recognition. Then abject horror. Then sheer panic. She watched herself kiss Marcus. "Leo, she began, her voice a strangled whisper. "No," he interrupted, his voice steady. Don't tell me you can explain it. Don't tell me it's not what it looks like. Don't insult my intelligence any more than you already have. It was a mistake, she sobbed. It just happened. A mistake? He said, the calm finally cracking. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a series of choices. You chose to lie to me when he moved in. You chose to lie to me for weeks. You chose to let him into our house today. You chose to kiss him on our sofa. He stood up. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. I want a divorce. The aftermath was less a storm and more a controlled demolition. Chloe, faced with irrefutable video evidence, had no defense. The divorce process moved with an administrative swiftness that felt surreal. Leo kept the house. Chloe moved into a small apartment across town. The most revealing part of the story came from Tessa. Before she moved back home, she met with Leo for coffee. She had found messages on Marcus's computer, dating back months before they had even considered moving. The move to Willow Creek hadn't been a coincidence. It had been an invasion. Marcus knew Chloe lived there. He had specifically targeted the house next door, using his wife and their marriage as a convenient facade. The for sale sign in front of the Thorne house was soon replaced by a sold sign. Marcus moved out, presumably to try and build something real with Chloe. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. Leo methodically rebuilt his life. He started therapy. He reconnected with friends. He threw himself into his work, finding a strange comfort in its clean, unambiguous logic. The house, once a shared space, was slowly becoming his own again. One crisp autumn afternoon, he was sitting in a local cafe when he saw her. Chloe walked in, looking tired and thinner than he remembered. Her eyes met his across the room. She hesitated, then walked over to his table. "Can I sit down for a minute?" she asked. Her voice timid. Leo nodded. He felt no anger, no sadness. He felt nothing, just a vast, quiet distance. She sat, fidgeting with her car keys. "How are you, Leo?" "I'm good," he answered, and was surprised to find that it was the truth. The wound was no longer open and raw. It was a scar, a permanent part of him, but it no longer ached. "And you?" She let out a long, weary sigh. "Could be better. Marcus and we didn't work out. Turns out I wasn't the only old flame he was trying to reconnect with. Fidelity isn't really his strong suit." Leo almost laughed at the bleak, predictable irony. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said. "Don't be. I deserved it," she said, finally looking him in the eye. Her own were filled with tears. "Leo, I know it's too late. But I am truly sorry. For what I did to you, for the person I became. You didn't deserve any of it." He considered her words for a moment, weighing them not with emotion, but with the cool logic he had come to rely on. "You're right," he said, his voice even. "I didn't. But I learned something from it. I learned that my own peace of mind is more valuable than a relationship built on lies. I learned to value myself enough to never again accept less than I deserve." A single tear rolled down her cheek. "I hope you find someone wonderful. Someone who deserves you." Leo finished his coffee and stood up from the table. "I already did," he said, looking down at her one last time. "Myself." He walked out of the cafe and didn't look back. Outside, the autumn sun was bright, and he felt its warmth on his face like a promise. He had lost a wife, a marriage, and the version of himself who believed in absolutes. But in the wreckage, he had found a different kind of strength, a resilience forged in betrayal. And that, he realized as he walked toward his car, was a foundation that no one else could ever break. As he drove home, to the house that was now only his, Leo Vance felt a quiet sense of peace. For the first time in a very long time, he was accountable only to himself. And the future was a clean, unwritten ledger. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.